So hi everyone, my name is Shivam Bohra. I'm a third year computer science engineering student from Dehradun. I love solving problems and I also love to teach. Welcome to our channel, Learn Competitive Programming with CodeChef. So if you are interested in competitive programming and want to learn and master data structures and algorithms, then this is a one-stop destination for you. Here we post weekly problem explanations, conceptual videos on various programming paradigms, and also conduct live problem solving sessions. So before we actually get started, here's a reminder for you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already yet. So the prerequisite for this particular course is the basic knowledge of C++ and the following data structures and algorithms. So in this series, we are going to learn about Standard Template Library or STL. Now, STL is one of the biggest reasons why most competitive programmers use C++ because C++ offers STL, right? By using STL, we can easily implement the most commonly used data structures and algorithms without even writing them from scratch, right? So for example, if let's say we have to implement binary search in a C++ code, then this would roughly take around 10 to 15 lines of code for the function definition plus an extra one line of code for the function calling, right? Now by using STL, we can directly call this function. We can directly call this function of binary search without even defining it, right? Without even defining it. So in this particular case, we need not to write these 10 or 15 lines, right? So this means that STL can be used to reduce the size of our code. Hence, it would also reduce the time taken to write the complete code, right? And this would greatly help us during coding competitions and coding rounds, right? So STL would definitely give you a boost during a competitive programming journey, right? So in this particular video series, we are going to see some of the most frequently used STL containers, which is something more than just data structures and STL algorithms. So let's get started. So the first containers that we are going to see is arrays, right? Now to use an array, we have to include this header file called as array, and to declare this array, we again have to write array, then triangular brackets open, then the data type of the array elements, then comma, and then the size of this array, right? And then triangular brackets close. After this, we have to write the array name. So the array name over here is A, right? So this is the array declaration. Remember that arrays have fixed size, which means that we cannot increase or decrease the size of this array, right? So if let's say we have to, or I have to initialize this array, I'll write A equals to curly braces open, and I'll write 5 different elements over here, right? Separated by a single comma, right? So now my array A has been initialized. Now, using the first for loop, I'm simply printing all the array elements, right? I'm simply printing all array elements, right? Then I'll leave a line, and on the next line, again, I'm printing the array elements. This is another way of printing the array elements. Here I have written int I colon A, and I'm simply printing I, right? This int over here means that the data type of the array elements is int, right? If my array over here had double type elements, then I would have used double over here, right? So this, the data type of this I would be the data type of the array elements, right? So if I run this code, then array elements would be printed twice, right?
once using this loop and once using this particular loop. So over here, again, we have an array A initialized by the same 5 elements, but this time in the first for loop, instead of printing it, I'm updating the array elements by 1, right? Or I'm incrementing the array elements by 1. So using this for loop, I'll increment each and every array element by 1. And using this for loop, I'm simply printing the array elements. So if I run this code, then here we can see that all the array elements have been incremented by 1. 0 is incremented to 1, 1 is incremented to 2, and similarly the rest 3 have also been incremented by 1. So in this particular code, we can see that using a of I, we can change the original array, right? We can change the original array, right? But the question is, can we also change the original array using the I in the second for loop, right? Can we, if I write I equals to I plus 1, then would this change the original array or not, right? So let's find out. So here we can see that we have this array A of size 5, and again we have the same 5 values, right? This time I'm trying to increment the array elements by 5, right? So I have written I equals to I plus 5, and using the second for loop, I am simply printing the array elements. So if I run this code, then here we can see that the array elements are still the same, which means that this line is not changing the original array, right? So if I want to change the original array, I have to write and over here. So this way, if I make any changes to this I over here, then the original array would also be changed. So if I write, or if I run this code now, then here we can see that our array elements have been incremented by 5. So the next container that we are going to see is pair. So a pair is used to store only 2 data elements, and these 2 data elements may or may not be of the same type, right? Now to use a pair, we have to include this header file called as utility, and to create a pair, we have to write pair, then triangular brackets open, then the data type of the first element, comma, the data type of the second element, right? These two may or may not be the same, right? And then the pair name. So my pair name is P, right? So then using this make pair function, I'm storing these two values, 65 and A, inside this pair P, right? The first value is an integer and the second value is a character, right? So using this make pair function, I'm storing these two values inside this pair P, right? Now if I want to access the first element of this pair P, I have to write P dot first, right? To access the first element of this pair P, I have to write P dot first. Similarly, to access the second element of pair P, I have to write P dot second, right? So if I run this code, then here we can see that the first element of this pair is a number which is 65. So 65 is printed first, and the second element is a character. So P dot second prints capital A. Now let's say we have to store name and roll number of a single student. Now for this, we can use a pair, because the first element of this pair could be a string which can store the name of the student, and the second element could be an integer which can store the roll number of that particular student, right? So we can store the name and roll number of a single student using a pair. But if let's say we have to store for many such students, then we have to create many such pairs, right? So now we'll use something called as a hybrid container, right? A hybrid container is a mixture of 2 or more types of containers, right? So here I'm going to use a mixture of pair plus array, right? So this way I can store the data or the name and roll numbers of many students, right? So what I'll do is I'll write array, right? Then here we specify the data type. Now the data type is going to be a pair, or the container type is going to be a pair, because we have to store two different values, name and a roll number, right? Out of these two values, the first value is going to be the name. So I'll write string for the name, and for the roll number, I can simply use int, right? Then triangular brackets close. Then the size of this array. So let's say we have to store for only 3 students. So I'll write 3 over here, and then the triangular brackets closed, right? And then the name of my array. So I'll write STU for students, right? So I've already created this array. So here we can see that we already have this array of pair, and I've already assigned its name, right? STU. Now the 0th element inside this STU has a name ABC and his roll number is 1. Similarly, the first element inside this array STU has name PQR and his roll number is 2, right? So to print or to iterate throughout this array, I can simply use this for loop. So just like in the previous case where we were using int I to traverse throughout this array, here I'm using pair of string of int, because this is the type of the element of this array, right? This array is storing pair types of elements, so I have to specify this data type over here for this I, right? So I'll write pair of string of int, right, for this I. And using I dot first, I can print the name, and using I dot second, I can print the roll number, right? So if I run this code now, then I can easily print the name and roll number of the 3 students, right? So here are the names and the roll numbers of the 3 students.